My career sucks.
Sex just isn't the same.
What's my purpose?
Where did this fat come from?
My relationship is killing me.
I'll never be happy.
My debt is piling up. I'll never find love. Why can't I be like other gay guys? Hey guys, it's time to get a grip, stop whining, make a bold move, and do something amazing with your 40-plus gay life. Let's get to the show with your Tell It Like It Is host, Rick Clemons, who does his best to never act like a dick or a diva unless you act like one first.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk. And we're going to have some good times today, which I think we usually do on the podcast, but I think there's some good times to do when there's a lot of chaos and upheaval in the world. Before we get to the upheaval, though, don't forget to come join us for our men's chats on the monthly basis. Typically, it's the third Monday of the month. I want to make sure you get there, go to the website, sign up for them. You can find it at gaymenschats.com. And we're doing everything from sex and dating and careers and, mental health, all that good stuff. But today we're going to dive into some mental health space, some understanding how to be different in the world, how to find, I'm not going to go too deep. We're going to find our own ways to defy gravity. Let's just go there. Let's play off a wicked there just a little bit. But it is a little chaotic and uncertain right now. And I want to help you through this author's work to truly discover your way forward. He was controversial when he made some waves years ago about a little calendar called Men on a Mission, and that got him booted out of the place. I'll let him kind of talk about that. But now he is the new author of a brand new book called Law of Zero. It's just come out. It's only been out a couple of months. He actually made number 2 on Amazon's gay bestsellers. Yay. Congrats on that one, Chad. And number 16 in the New Age self-help. So, when you do your book and it starts to hit those kind of spaces, you're quite the thing already, buddy. So thank you for being here and welcome to our podcast, Chad.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this and hopefully give some great things to your listeners, some great tools to help them navigate through these interesting times we live in.
They are interesting, right? It's such an interesting day to be alive. And some people are like, no, it's not. It's the worst. I'm like, well, if that's your view, then, you probably need to get some adjustments to your thinking. Be woe is me and all that. I get it. There's days I'm like, I don't know. But then I give myself the permission to go, okay, experience it, feel that, be that, take a breath and dive in. So, but there was some upheaval in your life that kind of changed a lot of things. I kind of alluded to it in the introduction. Let's talk a little bit about Men on a Mission and how that changed some things. And I'm assuming it probably catapulted you to thinking a little bit about this lovely book that you just put out. So what's the backstory there, buddy?
All right. Well, it's quite a journey, I should say, that kind of led me to the point in my life where I felt like I needed to do something so outrageous as to take the image of the church that I grew up in, which is the LDS Church, Mormon Church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, however you might know it as out in the world. Yeah. And it was a lot of years of pretty much trauma and trying to fit a mold that was never really meant for me. And I finally reached a point in my life of constantly battling what I call in my book, the man in the mirror, which is my true authentic self. I battled this person my whole life. But I finally reached a point where I just said, raised the middle finger to it all and said, I'm going to do something to take this perfect image that I am been, asked to live, this fake, persona. And I'm going to just take all of that and do something humorous and fun. And because that's how I deal with my trauma, is through humor. And I had this crazy idea to do this shirtless beefcake calendar called Men on a Mission, which I did back in the early 2000s. It was like 2008, I believe, the first year that came out. Yep. And it hit. I thought it was just going to be something locally that we do. This is fun, haha. And it went viral. It went all over the place. And the church came knocking at my door a few months later, asked me to stop producing the next one because it was wildly popular. It was in the malls and across America. I mean, when Calendar Club comes knocking on your door rather than, presenting to them and hopefully you get selected. No, they came knocking on our door. asking to put them in malls across America. Yeah, they came knocking on my door. The church did, and asked me to stop production of it.
Hmm.
Well, of course, that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And so they took it next level and had a what they call a church court on me,
Yep.
and they excommunicated me from the church. Now, mind you, I was a sixth generation Mormon, so I feel like you can't really at that point excommunicate somebody from their heritage. It'd be like telling a Jew you're no longer Jewish. It's like, well, there's something that kind of comes with your
Exactly.
bloodline, and that's kind of how I feel being Mormon. Even though I'm no longer Mormon, I still feel like, well, that's still my heritage. That's
Yeah.
where I come from. That's my
Hmm.
identity, really, when it comes to my family.
Yeah.
And but they still, that's how they do things. And out I go. Well, they caught me in a loophole because I was also at the same time finishing up my degree at Brigham Young University through independent studies, because I
Mm.
had kind of taken a pause on my education and started my own business, and that was kind of doing well. So I thought, oh shoot, well, I probably should go finish this degree that's hanging out there. And so I did, and so I was waiting for it to post. I already finished my classes, and then they came in, excommunicated me just a few weeks before my degree posted, which then gave them the right through their honor code to say that I was no longer in good honor code standing, and they revoked my degree. Of course, this was after I walked across the stage, did the whole thing.
Right.
I even think they asked me to say the opening prayer for my
Wow.
for my graduation. I mean, I feel like they just set me up to just ball. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's the way I was looking at it at the time, but it really felt that way. That they wanted to embarrass me. But regardless if that was intentional or not, it it then became a another big, huge story in the media, that the degree was taken from me, and then of course I had lawyers coming out of the woodwork that wanted to take this case on pro bono and go after the
The
school
church.
and
Yeah.
the church and all this. And then when they realized that there's just you have to have a will of steel or millions of dollars to take on an institution like that.
Yeah.
And when they realize that, look, yeah, we know they're not abiding by their own honor code. They're not abiding by the standards of being an accredited university, because we even challenged the Northwest Commission of Colleges that hold their accreditation.
Hmm.
They pretty much said there's nothing to see here, even though they're in direct violation. Even today, as we're talking, they're in violation of accreditation standards to be an accredited university. But as we know in the world we live in now, money will get you whatever you want, and
Yep.
so they pay a lot of money to be accredited. I don't know what that is. I did ask that question, and they said they would not tell me.
Hmm.
So I decided at that point, I'm tired of this fight. I'm tired of um, trying to be some vigilante. I'm just
Yeah.
at that point, no one was standing behind me. I'm like, I don't have an army behind me anymore. What am I fighting for? What I
Right.
really want in my life is peace, and
Hmm.
I want balance, and I want to just be happy, and I want to be authentic, and um, and so I just walked away from all of it and went about my life and started really putting all my focus on my career, which is doing corporate team building. And then
Hmm.
that became, wildly successful for me. I've been really happy with that, where that is, currently. And I've got a great team that manages that with me. And I reached a point where I thought I would like to share my story
Hmm.
and help other people like myself who have struggled with finding their identity and their authentic true self, to really how to do it, and let's give them some tools. And so I wanted to write a book actually about forgiveness. And one day, I mean, I'd started writing not long after I had been excommunicated, and that was in 2008 or so,
Yeah.
2009 maybe. And I put those writings to bed. And then about 5 years ago, my very good friend Quinn, who lives up in Los Angeles, called me and said, Chad, you've got to finish your book. I feel so strongly about this. And so
Hmm.
strongly that he and his friend Yayoi, they drove down from LA to sit at my table in San Diego to go over this like idea of like what should I be writing about. And the book that I originally was writing somebody in the interim had written the book, like by
Hmm.
title, everything, the concept. I'm like, well, somebody else did it already. Which
Right.
is funny because my grandfather used to always tell me that if you have a really good idea, you better act on it. He would always say there's like a little trap door in the back of your brain. If you
Hmm.
have an idea and you don't do something about it, it's going to leave your brain and someone else is going to catch
Yep.
it and they're going to do it. And so I thought, well, there we go. But they still felt like I should.
Chad, that's interesting because sorry to interrupt, but you just told a story very similar to what Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert
Uh-huh.
tells in her book, Big Magic. Yeah, I think it's in one of the first few chapters of that book where she describes, like, yeah, I had this novel idea about this gal that goes to the Amazon and I don't know, I think it was a plane crash or something. And she meets this guy and da, 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 and then, this whole thing turns in. She goes, and, I had it in my idea and I started to kind of write it. And all of a sudden, and then, I didn't really do anything about it. And then years later, I met this gal and she's an author and she starts to tell me about this book. And she goes, and as she starts to tell me about this book, she's telling me about this gal that goes to the Amazon. She goes, I never said anything to anybody about this. I never told anybody what this story was going to be. And here this gal, it was really interesting. So you're describing the exact same thing. And it is very interesting how, we put these things out there and then if you're not going to do anything about it, which I'm sitting on a book that I'm not really doing anything about right now, it's written, but I'm just kind of like, okay, I know at some point, somebody might do it, and I'm going to have to be okay with it because I'm just okay. I messed around and screwed around, and here we are.
Well, it's interesting. My friend Monique, who wrote the foreword in my book, and she's a journalist, and years ago, I don't even know what year it was, but it was a long time ago. We had sat down we would have these like brainstorm sessions all the time where we would just talk about the magic of life and what we want to create and all this stuff.
Right.
And we came up with this awesome idea of a website called Sponsor Moi, because her name was Monique, and she goes by Mo. So we go
Mm-hmm.
moi, kind of, because she
Yeah.
was at the time a struggling artist. Like she wanted to be an actress, and all of had this dream of that that Hollywood life. And as we know, it's a struggle
It
to
is a
be an
struggle.
actor, and you are gonna be strapped financially. You are gonna be living in conditions that aren't what you would necessarily want to be as an actor. But what if we were to come up with this website called Sponsor Moi, where people could uh, like donate to you, and you could put videos online of the things that you're doing. And we essentially created this like GoFundMe before GoFundMe was even in our like atmosphere. And so
Interesting.
once and but we didn't know, like we talked about it all the time. We even had like put together like plans of this, and like but we didn't know how to start a company like that. We don't know anything who does about programming and websites and all of that. So, it was just a pipe dream. And then all of a sudden, all of these, like Patreon comes out. And I think Patreon is probably the closest to what we had, envisioned. And yeah, it's really wild. So if you have a really good idea,
Yep.
whoever's listening to this right now, you better do it right
Mm-hmm.
now. You better go get
Yep.
your trademark. You better go get your copyright,
Yep.
because somebody else right now has your same idea. And
Yep.
I mean, I've seen this happen multiple times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's funny that my grandfather has quite some wisdom. In fact, I write a lot about him in my book. He really was a man before his time. He was
Mm.
definitely a Renaissance man of every sense of the word.
Yeah.
And he was all about, this idea of, thinking positive thoughts and attracting them, which we now know is a law of attraction. So when this started becoming more mainstream, this idea of thinking positively and getting positive results, I was like, my grandpa already told me this stuff years ago.
Right.
It was nothing. It was not
He was the
shocking or
man
new to
before
me.
his time that could have made even more money coming up with all this. So now
Oh,
you
I
start having
know.
all these concepts and ideas and everything.
Mhm.
How does that bring us to this current space of here we are now with the Law Zero book?
Sure. So yeah, kind of tying back to my friend driving down from LA and telling me to write this book. They had
Yep.
left, and I kind of left with this idea of, okay, whatever I need to write about needs to be so much bigger than forgiveness. Like, what's on the other side of
Mm.
forgiveness? Forgiveness is just a part of it. What is it? There's
Yep.
something bigger. And so that night I was just kind of like meditating, just asking my inner knowing, like, what is it? What am I
What is
supposed to
it?
write about? And this is when it gets kind of hoodoo voodoo. There was this voice, this female voice that I have heard just very few times in my life, very profound times in my life. This voice has spoken to me, and it's female. And she said, it's called the law of zero. And I was
Mm,
like, what? So I get up, get on my Google, law of zero, nothing, nothing. I'm like, where do I start? So I called Yayoi, who was part of that meeting, and she's Japanese, if you don't know by the name, because Yayoi means
yeah.
March in Japanese. But she's like, oh my gosh, Chad, in Japanese culture, there's the Enzo, which is this hand drawn circle. It means the
Right.
nothingness, the void. And I thought, okay, interesting. So that was my stepping off point. So then I started just doing all this research. I even like, because I'm running a company at the time, so it's hard for me to give this project
Right.
all of my
Yep.
time. So I even hired people to help me research, like help me research what this means. And everything kind of pointed back to like ancient religions, like things from like ancient like Hinduism, this concept of Zen. I even met with a tantra master in San Diego who's like renowned for his work, and he taught me about this goddess named Shakti, which goes back to that a Hindu goddess, and
Sure.
she was the goddess of the void.
Huh.
And I'm like, so what is this space? Like, why? What is this nothingness? What is this zero? What is it?
Right.
And so that's what I discovered, is that zero is it is both a place and a state.
Hmm.
So it is a state of being completely neutral. So you're not tethered to either outcome, because zero doesn't discriminate. There is no right, there is no wrong, there is no righteous, there is no unrighteous. It just
Mm.
is. Okay.
Yep.
And if we can untether ourselves to the outcomes of what life beholds, and we're no longer emotionally tied to something bad or something tremendously good, we're just kind of neutral, then we can
Right.
actually navigate through life so much easier. We can go through that gauntlet without all being torn in all these different directions, where then our message gets confused. It's kind of like we were just talking about having these ideas and they go out to the universe. So if we have this idea that we want to do, we're in alignment with this thing, and we're going for that thing, whatever it is, and we have all of these attachments to us of all of these what ifs and these kind of fears, then they're going to help, or not, they're going to help, they're going to knock us out of alignment, and they're not going to help us get smoothly to our goal. But if we stay in the state of zero, it's kind of like grease. You just kind of
Yep.
get right where you need to go.
Go right.
So
Yep.
that's the state. And the place, when zero is a place, is a place where all creation comes from. So
Mm.
when you have an idea, a thought, has to come from somewhere, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
just magically appear. It has to come from somewhere. And so this is like zero is the ultimate energy source. So you can call it God, you can call it source, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever you want. It has so many names, but it is a power source. And again, it's neutral. So it's the ultimate yes man. So whatever you want to do in your life, if you want to be a serial killer, then it's going to support you and you can become a serial killer. If
Hmm.
you want to be, Mother Teresa and inspire and enrich the world, you can do that too. So it really depends on you as being the baseline factor of what you want to do with this power that's given to us.
Such a interesting concept. And I've done a lot of self-development work, and each piece takes me to a new space. As simple
Mm-hmm.
as, I mean, I'm not going to say simple, but even start with why with Simon Sinek. It was such an interesting journey to kind of go embrace that. And then, I brought up Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic. That was, I mean, I loved her for Eat, Pray, Love, but then, and I talk about that book a lot. Like, it's such an interesting book, and a lot of people don't know about it. I mean, there's lots that do because it sold millions of copies. But when you think Elizabeth Gilbert, it's Eat, Play, Love, right? Because it's that commercial piece. But this Big Magic thing is they're out really, and it's for creatives, but there's so many beautiful things inside it. Each one of these things came from a place of nowhere, right? It got seeded out of a thought that wasn't there. So there was nothing there until this thought happened, And I love this concept, Chad, because we as humans, at least from my perspective, especially as gay men, we tried to but why is this here? We so overanalyze so many things. And I love that in the book, you really emphasize, 5 principles, which I'll let you kind of walk us through. But I'm going to start with principle number 1. As a gay man, and why do we question everything? Have this self-awareness, find the awareness to okay, it's good that I'm questioning, but what's behind the questioning? And then what's behind what we're trying to receive? It's really beautiful to go dig like that. But even all those questions started at nothing until they came into being. And I love this concept. I mean, so I don't know. I'm feeling like some stuff coming up even as we're chatting, because I know we're about to enter the zone. There's just this interesting space of but yes, what if you look at it this way, or all this sort of stuff. So for you, as you started to write it, it's got to have been I guess this is how I see things. What was happening for you personally?
So I actually discovered the law of zero while I was writing it. It wasn't like I had all these years of experience and then I'm like, okay, I need to share this. It was actually the opposite. So boom, this voice says it's called the law of zero. Start doing research. I start understanding what the concept is. But then when you think of the concept of nothingness, when you even look out at the stars at night, it's so vast, it's overwhelming, right? Because there's no end. Yeah. So if it's just so massive, how do you hold it right here at the palm of your hands? Right. So that's kind of where I put my focus, okay, what is it and how do we control it? And that's when I started having this information delivered to me, like packages, like Amazon packages of what it was. And I started having this awareness that, okay, in order to access zero and control it, there are 5 things that we have to do. And in discovering this, I started to connect the dots backwards, which Steve Jobs so famously said, and I quote him in the book, about if you can look back at your life, you can connect the dots of how everything has kind of come together to create who you are and where you are right now in your space. And so, but that takes, like you said, awareness. So as I started having this awareness, I realized that, well, that's one of the entry points. And it's probably the first entry point, because we have to have awareness to even know that we're out of alignment, because a lot of us go through life and we just, live the human condition without any real deep awareness of ways that we can, have a better experience and to not
and to your point,
caught up in things.
To your point, just think about just as a community. Okay. So I'm going to go to the wider LGBTQ community. Just the coming out process starts with finding the awareness of this is who I am. This is truly who I am. And when you start that journey, so to speak, the tug of war is going on. Oh, this can't be really who I am. Am I really is this really who I am? I think it is. Well, no, but that doesn't feel right. And then you bring in other stuff like, church fundamentals and all this sort of stuff. It's really interesting. But as I was reading through all the stuff before the interview, I was like, this is such an interesting thing for us in our coming out worlds. You become aware, you align to it, you take ownership of who you are, you release so that you can receive the goodness of being who you want to be as an LGBTQ person, and then you engage that power. I hope everybody just heard what I just did with this, because it's actually that simple. But now start to overlay it into, let's talk about writing books. You have this awareness that you want to write a book, you get in alignment with it, you start taking ownership of, I'm going to make this happen. You got to release some beliefs around writing a book, and I don't have enough money to hire this or that. But then as soon as you release those things and you start to receive this is happening, then you engage in the power.
Rick, you are officially a zero hero. You get it. What I love about the 5 points of zero, which you have just told everybody what they are, it's no secret. You can apply it to everything, absolutely everything. And so whatever module that you use to enrich your life, if it be therapy or if it be, the different, whatever you listen to, whatever like inspires you, you can apply it to this. And you, which is why it's, again, it's the baseline. Zero is the baseline. This fits into everything that we do. And you could even go backwards in your life. Okay, let's talk about, the people who are in unhappy relationships.
Yep.
So you have the awareness that you're in an unhappy relationship. You have put yourself in alignment with this person that makes you unhappy. You have owned the fact that you're an unhappy, miserable person. Okay, that you're unhappy in this relationship, and you just own the fact that this is just my life. And then you are you are so afraid to release this reality. Okay, so you could receive what possibilities can be outside of that. So you're literally holding on to this. You're unable to release it. And then the power that you're engaging every day is going back to the beginning of I'm in an unhappy situation and there's nothing I can do. Right. So you keep perpetrating this. So you're using zero to create chaos and mayhem in your life. So the key really is taking ownership. Because if we were to compare the law of zero with like the law of attraction, and the law of attraction is very simple. It just says, have the awareness of what you want, get in alignment with it, and then go engage your power and go for it. But there's two parts missing, which is why in my life, I was all about the law of attraction. My grandfather taught this to me as a young age. I was always a very ambitious young person. I mean, I built my first house when I was 25 years old. I mean, it was a great, thing for me because I was all about, being successful and going after these things. But a lot of the success became a mirage. I would get right to having it and then poof, it would just disappear. And constantly I would right to that point of having that perfect relationship and then poof, it would disappear. Well, why? Because under the surface is the stuff we got to work on. Because if we're unable to take ownership of the traumas in our life that have written what I call in my book, our human story code, which is the coding that makes up who we are. If we're unable to take ownership of all the things that have made up who we are, then we're unable to release those things so that we can receive the things that we want. So if those two things are clogged up, you can keep attracting that new car, that new job, that new house, that new relationship, but ultimately you're not going to be happy and it's going to go away. Because something's going to knock you out of alignment and you're not going to know how to like get back into alignment because fundamentally the surface, the foundation underneath you is damaged.
Well, it's damaged and it's on shaky ground because you're not really in that space. I mean, I'll use one more quick example. It was years ago. I used to go to a conference called World Domination Summit. And the first year I went, I was blown away by it because like, oh my gosh, this is such a cool vibe. It's about, adventure community. And I can't remember the third pillar, but it was in Portland. It was very unique as a conference. We did crazy stuff like, tug of wars in the breaks, and we did like floating in the port, the river in Portland, doing like they broke a world record every year. I mean, this was like one of those conferences, like it's all about the experience, right? It's the experiential stuff that gets you out of your head and rethinking stuff, right? So of course, the first year I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh. But I'm also, because I was raised in a narcissistic household, fighting my own narcissism, going, I could do some of that. Oh, I could speak better than those people. I was just beginning to be a speaker. So my ego was really like, right? I talked to the organizers. I'm like, hey, I would love to speak here. I've got this concept about everybody's got closets, da, 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 da. And they're like, okay, that's cool. I'm like, well, so what do we do? How do I apply? Well, you don't apply. Oh, okay. So what do we do? When we're ready, we'll find you. I was kind of like, really? And my ego was saying, I really want to say some of those people that were up on stage, they weren't all that great. I could be really good because ego was in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next 2 years I go and I'm like, I'm kind of doing the same thing. Love it. Great experience. But man, I really want to be on that stage. Until finally I became aware of my ego. My ego was in the way. And I wasn't taking, I wasn't aligned to that. And when I started to get aligned to that and to take ownership of it, I was like, okay, I need to release my ego about this. And guess what? I'm going to believe them. When the time is right, the time is right. Year 4, I'm like, I don't even care. I'm to the point like, hey, I love just being at the conference. I don't care if I ever get on the stage. I knew the founder. He'd been on my podcast. He was on my new podcast. And as we're wrapping up the podcast, we get done. He's like, how was that? It's all good. He had just had a book come out. And I'm talking, this is a guy who's got New York Times bestsellers. I was like really thrilled that he gave me time for do this, right? 5 years later, he says to me, have you ever been on the World Domination Summit stage as a speaker, Rick? I have to be honest, Chad. I believe your law of zero is exactly why I got there. Because I got really aware of what was holding me back. I let the ego go. I aligned to, you can't do this. This isn't something you force into being. I had to take that ownership. I had to finally release, if I get on stage, great. If I don't, it's just not meant to be. And I started engaging my power and getting speaking gigs at other places and be speaking where hey, I got to speak here. I got to speak there. The day I took the stage there was one of the most humble, exciting, gratifying moments of my life. Because I realized I stepped into letting my power take me there in a whole different way. And the irony of now, let's go to the Steve Jobs quote, when you look back over your life. When I look back over all the different ways that I got to being a speaker on a stage like that, a couple of thousand people, some big names have spoke at that event. It's because everything added to everything, to everything, to everything. And it's kind of ironic now that the other part of my business, which everybody who listens kind of knows, is I coach speakers building their speaking business. And one of the key tenets that I teach them, even though it's somebody else's, intellectual property, as the lead coach, I always say, know your humility. Because when you know your humility as a speaker, you will get gigs. And I couldn't help but want to share that because I think it ties so perfectly to this law of zero talk we're having. Wow, so now I'm more than just a law of zero hero. I'm like the king, but it's such an interesting thing. It's so interesting. And, think about guys in our world that, dating. Oh, I can't find a guy. Oh, no, nobody wants me. Well, really, what's the awareness you need to find around that? Where do you need to become aligned? Where do you need to take ownership? What do you have to release to be able to receive? And then how do you step into your power to find the guy if you really want to be in a good, solid dating relationship, a marriage, whatever it might be? So you've written a book, man, that there's so many applications to this. That's what I think is beautiful.
Well, my father is a far right, true believing Mormon. And when I shared the principles of zero with him, I was expecting a little bit of pushback because, if something doesn't come from the divine channels through the church, then it's not godly. Mm-hmm. And I showed him this because, he's been a realtor for many, many years. And he's up there in age. I mean, he's 81, 82 years old now, but he still doesn't want to quit. He just loves, and good thing, because he'll probably live to be 100 years old because he's just every day wakes up with this drive, this motivation. But there'll be a year he doesn't have a single sale. And so I shared these principles with my father, I think, expecting that pushback. And he was just like, oh, so I need to take ownership of the fact that I believe that I'm just not going to get any sales this year. And I need to release that belief. because that's not a real belief. That's a false truth that I've told myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just looking at my father going, oh my gosh. So guess what? He did the work. Sales started coming in. And so even though he did ask me, I will be completely honest, he did ask me not to publish this book. And not because of the principles in the book, it's because of my story. I get very raw and real in sharing my life stories and exposing a lot of the traumas that happened to me in being raised in the Mormon church.
Yep.
And he just felt like those stories need to not be out there. But I told my father, I said, look, there are other people out there that maybe they didn't where they weren't raised in the Mormon church or, in this type of system of control, but they still were raised in some sort of belief system that they
Yes.
feel that they're flawed and broken. And we can unwind and unravel all of that and recode ourselves through the law of zero. And so after I kind of explained that to him, he's never once challenged me on publishing the book. And it's out there now. And but for him to also accept these principles of being somebody that is you would think would not be in alignment with it. It was really kind of a magical moment for me that I'm like, okay, if this can speak to my Mormon father,
Yeah.
this can speak to everyone.
But here's the thing, Chad. I went through the same thing when I published Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. There's stuff about my upbringing. There's things that happen. In fact, there's an ex-boyfriend that I talk about in there who actually was very upset and went on Amazon and said, well, I'm the guy that he refers to as this guy in the book. And that's not really, that's Rick's version of this. That's not the real version of this. And I just kind of was like, I'm telling the story the way I tell the story. It really isn't about us at that point. It's
Right.
here's my view of how I saw what happened in my life. I'm sharing because somebody else is having a very similar experience in some form in their life. At that moment, that becomes about the other person, not about us, the
Sure.
author.
And all we can really do in situations like that, especially when people come for us like that, is we instead of like getting caught up in their cyclone, we have to really seek shelter in those moments because
Mm-hmm.
um, if you just become a beacon of joy and authenticity of who you are, there's always going to be naysayers and people that come for you, and you can actually just hold your ground like a big tree with roots, in the
Mm-hmm.
ground so firm that no storm's going to knock you over. But
Mm-hmm.
it's when we give into that, if we give into that, catch a little bit of that emotional cyclone, boy, we can get caught up in it and go right down the path with them. Something similar happened to me, but the opposite. So
Mm.
there's somebody in my book. In the book, she goes by the name of Michelle. This was a woman that I dated when I was really conflicted of, I was like
Right.
1 foot being gay, 1 foot being straight, like doing this tightrope balance. And she really wanted, I mean, she knew that I was gay, but felt like I could be fixed. And so she came through my closet, took out all my clothes that, makes me look gay. She really tried to like erase this identity. And I thought, oh man, she's not gonna love that I wrote this about her, because she actually outed me to my bishop and the
Mm.
church, which then, led to a lot of,
Led to everything else. Yep. Yep.
yeah. And before I published the book, I called her and I said, I just need you to know that you're in this book, but I also need you to know that I don't hold any, like, there's no bad feelings between us at all. If anything, I love you. And you were such an important part of my becoming aware of who I am. And thank you for like showing up and being a part of that life, that part of life for me, because without that, I don't know if I would be where I am right now. That really
Yep.
launched me. And I hadn't seen her in years. I mean, this was like 20 years ago we dated. So Thanksgiving, because she lives in Utah, my parents still live in Utah. So I was up there for Thanksgiving, and I messaged her and I said, would you like to get together for dinner? And I had the actual hard copy of the book before it came out. And I gave it to her, and I gave her what I call my cocktail napkin sermon, which is essentially just go over the 5 principles of zero. And she was just like, I gave her like this like, I don't know, like a new knowledge that would just, you would just see her like thirsting for it. And so she has taken the principles. She now has had people over to our house where she has talked to them about zero and the principles, and she's become like the ultimate zero hero. And talk about
Mm.
somebody that could have been angry and gone on Amazon and written this horrible thing like this guy did. No, she actually went on Amazon and said, "This book has changed my life."
Yep.
So it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
She chose to rise to the occasion and to
Yep.
take what I've learned and to apply it. And instead of us, having this bitterness, because it was a pretty rough time for both of us.
Sure.
And I mean, like, emotional, because it was painful,
Mm.
to look at somebody that you love and be like, I can't be with you.
Mm-hmm.
And for us 20 years later to have this bond over zero, and I'm
Exactly.
constantly checking in with her. And one thing that she told me, when we had our dinner, she says, I really feel like I'm out of alignment with my career. I want a new career. And then she texted me a month ago and she said, well, I got laid off, so I guess
Mm.
I got to go find that new career. And
Wow.
so right now she's kind of taking time off, getting really clear on what that is, what her next, step in life is when it comes to career. But it's like every time I message her or hear from her, my heart is just full with so much joy, because I think, my gosh, that could have been your ex-boyfriend.
Yep. Yep.
But instead,
But even in
she's
those
created.
negative spaces,
Mhm.
there's so much growth.
Oh, totally.
There's so much, like, I'm going to say the old Rick would have been like, fuck you. And I'm like, oh, isn't this interesting? That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. So it's,
There's a side
again,
of me that's like, you do realize what you just wrote. There's a lot of people are going to go, wow, look at this guy,
yeah.
and again, I mean, he served such a beautiful part in my life.
Mhm.
And I don't know, because I haven't read the book in years. I haven't touched that book in years, but I think even at the end of that chapter, I'm like, this was a significant piece of my journey forward. And
Mhm.
sometimes these are the pieces that we miss, like, your awareness with your dad. My dad had a similar situation where in a hospital room, he talked about me being, this is my son. I don't really get what he does, but he seems to have a huge impact in people's life. I was standing outside the hospital room and always thinking he didn't get me. And here we were. He had made that beautiful space. So I love that this is the thing that it's bringing up for you, Chad, and that you're having this impact with people. I'm so excited that I really got to, like, experience you and your perspective of this in this environment and learn more about it. Is there anything that you feel like somebody who's kind of like, I don't know if I can embrace this, what would be able to be a little nudge that might inspire somebody to go, okay, yeah, let's go look at this process?
Well, zero only asks for one thing, and that's your
Mm.
will. So if you are willing to let go of the things in your life that no longer serve you, and to take ownership of everything in your life, the good and the bad, if you're willing to look under the hood and
Mm-hmm.
face the demons that you have stuffed and hidden away all of these years, if you are willing to let that go, I promise you that you're going to create boundless miracles in your life. And you're
Mm.
going to have more Michelles in your life. People that you battled with at some point in life are going to come back, and that relationship is going to just be elevated, and it's going to uplift. You're going to uplift each other. You're going to uplift yourself. And also, if you're struggling with your identity, and especially those who are struggling with being authentic with their families and their communities, and they have to feel they have to live a false truth of their life. Really, I encourage you to step into the light, and all these broken, fragmented pieces of who we are as being gay men, because we've grown up believing that there's something flawed and wrong with us. Know that those broken, fragmented pieces is where the light gets in, and those are always and will always be the best parts of you, because that's your authentic truth. And if we live authentically and just be a beacon of joy. Your family, your friends, your community that you're so afraid of being authentic with, they're going to want to drink from the wellspring of your power, because you have something that they want because you're authentic.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Chad, thank you so much for being here. And guys, I know some of you may go on, okay, I think this could work for me. I'm not so sure. I'm on the fence. I'm going to invite you to, visit his website. It's all going to be on the show page to really unpack and understand, like, okay, how could this help me? Career, relationships, health, friendships, family, whatever it is, because maybe some other book didn't resonate with you. Maybe this one will. Hopefully it will. I always love to give away a copy of the book. So the first person, most of my listeners know this, first person who reaches out to me directly and says, hey, Rick, I'd like a copy of the book. Shoot me that email to rick@rickclemons.com. And I will gladly send you a copy of Chad's book as my gift back into the world. And Chad, thank you so much for being you and bringing this lovely work to the planet. And I can't help but just wish you all the best, man. And
well, thank you.
look
I
forward to
appreciate
where
you.
it goes.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and thanks for all the work that you've done. You've paved the
Mhm.
way for so many others as well. So thank you.
It's been fun.
being
I'm so
you.
glad we got to do this today. And guys, just remember, you all have the power within you to go and live your life. No fears, no excuses, no apologies. And to also tune back in another week. We will have another episode of 40 Plus Gay Men Gay Talk for you to, I don't know, maybe next week we're going to talk about sex. Maybe we're going to talk about mental health. You know that every week it's something different. So thanks for being here, guys, and listening. And again, Chad, thank you so much for sharing what you did today. I really appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for 40 Plus Gay Men, Gay Talk, where size doesn't matter. We drop our bullshit, get over our screwed up fears, make bold moves, and live life without apologies. Don't forget to join us on Facebook at 40 Plus Gay Men, Gay Talk, where the conversations continue.